Hello and welcome to the Ball Card Show, the sports podcast.
For the Sports Collector.
I'm Jason Otero.
I'm Gary LeMaster.
And this is Season 5, Episode 18. It's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
We got a lot to talk about today. Topps is in the hot seat over some autograph issues. Walmart Live is a thing, apparently. We're going to break down different models for earning income through cards as a business. There's a different approach for everybody. Everyone's telling you to do it their way. We're just going to say there's options, and here's how this works. What makes it tough, what makes it easy, all the economics of it. As always, we've got the lookout. We've got low-end liquid. And, let's not forget, PSA is offering some some new services that are sure to give you a reason to be a little hot under the collar. But, man, I feel refreshed. I feel...
You have vacation.
Back. I'm a little bit less pasty than normal and pale. So, it was a great trip. It was really nice.
I was excited because you got me this hat.
Pimento cheese hat. I saw that in the pro shop of a golf course. Fix this mic here. I saw it in the pro shop of a golf course, and I was like, he has to own this. I have to get this for him. And I sent a text. It was just like, pimento cheese hat? And he was like, yes, no context. And there was one question, will it fit my fat head?
Yeah, there was. It makes sure it'll fit my head.
For those of you that have been joining us online saying, is he always going to wear cartoon shirts and goofy hats?
Yes.
Is that his thing? Yes, he's a child, and we love it. So it's just the way it's going to be. Also, quick reminder, getting some requests on this. We haven't dropped anything yet, but if you missed it, we dropped the What's Your Highest for dealers at card shows, and there've been a few requests for merch down the road.
We may do a little short run of some merch.
Yeah. So
if you guys want it, comment, let us know, and maybe we'll throw something up.
Gary dropped a fantastic episode last week going through the prospects, explaining general prospecting terms. If you didn't catch that, be sure to go follow up on that video. As always, and maybe I'm a little biased. There's no way that it had the same pizzazz.
I don't disagree.
Concrete knowledge, information, valuable insights, tips, and all that, but not so much on the pizzazz.
Correct.
I think that's what it was missing most of all.
Yeah, when I did the episode, when you were like, hey, don't forget I'm on vacation, you got to do an episode by yourself. It'd be a great time for prospecting. My response was, that's going to get boring for people really fast.
You kept it moving.
I did keep it moving, but what makes prospecting fun is I really like it, and you give me hell about it as it's happening, and that makes it entertaining for people. Otherwise, it's just a lot of terms and numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's an easy watch. I'm saying it's a valuable one. Just like when you had to do a report in school and you had to go to the reference section. Nobody wants to read those encyclopedias, but by God, we're glad that they were there. And if you were really, really resourceful, you found out about Cliff Notes. Remember those books?
Oh, yeah.
Cliff Notes and Spark Notes?
Yeah.
So option one is, for this book report, is there a movie at the library I can rent for free guess my way through the paper?
This was easy access to the internet through a device in your pocket at all times.
You maybe knew two people that had internet, right? But, it was, can I get this movie at the library for free? If not, can I convince my parents to go to Blockbuster? And can I get this movie without them realizing he really wants to watch Ivanhoe the movie? What is it? You know what I mean? Like, just doesn't make sense. Step 3.
I love that you went to Ivanhoe.
Just hypothetically here. Hypothetically, maybe you had to do a report in 8th grade at Grace Christian School in Southern Indiana. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But, you would have the progress of the different ways. Then the internet comes out and it changes everything. But do you remember the printed Cliff Note books?
Yes, that's what existed. You remember, I didn't have a computer class in high school until my senior year.
Were they making those mid-90s is when they started printing those out? Or was it sooner?
Oh, yeah. No, it was sooner than that.
They were like pamphlets. It was like a synopsis. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But no longer. How did I get on this subject?
I don't know. We're there, though.
Reference section. Gary, prospecting episode. So, yes. Here we are. Are you ready to jump into some meat and potatoes?
Let's do work.
I'm going to let you jump right in to Topps making headlines, and not in a good way. Boy, if you could listen to our episodes a couple years ago, like right about the time we were like, Fanatics is saving Topps. It was going to go away, but it's back now. I wish. Well, I'll just let you jump in. Crazy stuff happening with autographs with Topps. The way they're handling it is a mess. Kick it off. I've been talking too much already.
So if you haven't seen, the new situation has come up. And let me preface this by saying, for years, there has been kind of the very just like publicly known secret that a lot of the autos we get on cards may or may not be signed by the athlete. Luca is a perfect example of this. Very just well-known fact that his mom signed at least half of his rookie auto stickers. Yep. And they still ended up on cards that Panini still said are guaranteed. So the big difference here between Panini's issue and Topps' issue is verbiage. Now, on the back of a Panini card, it says this autograph is guaranteed by Panini of America. That's what it says. That's all it says. Just means that they guarantee that it's real and they'll do something about it if it's not. Topps, on the other hand, their verbiage says something very different. It says the signing of this card was witnessed by a representative from Topps.
Now, that implies a human being, right?
Yes, that implies a human being.
Was witnessing it. And by definition, what would you consider witnessing to mean?
Watching it happen.
In person?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know
with it.
What's happening.
I thought you had a piece of tape on your arm. You don't. It was
don't?
just your tattoo.
My tats?
So, in general, that's the difference there. One is a much more strongly worded thing that's taking responsibility to a different level. So now what has happened in the last few weeks is that PSA is starting to reject cards signed by Lionel Messi. Now, when this product, and this was a lot of Topps Dynasty stuff. Go ahead.
Explain Topps Dynasty in the scheme of like Topps products.
This is
important.
The one product that is so fanatically collected by the people who collect it that they know the cards from the product inside and out, whether they own them or not. Like, they'll be able to tell you the print run, what patches are in what card.
It's a high-end product
Very
that tends
high-end
to
product.
hold its value.
Oh, yes.
Way better over a lot of the other expensive products.
And it's a card that holds more value raw than it does graded most of the time. Dynasty collectors want that Dynasty seal on the one touch.
Have fun buying that at 70%. It's not happening.
It's not happening there. So when the product first came out, there were people on message boards who know Lionel Messi's auto inside and out, and they know what the fakes most of the time have been signed by his brother. And so it was kind of a known thing, but PSA didn't do much about it until recently, and now they're starting to reject these cards. This puts Topps in a real bad spot, because if the main company that certifies and authenticates and grades these things is saying this isn't real.
Yep.
Now we're opening up a whole can of worms. What other cards that Topps has witnessed aren't real signatures? Frank Gore Jr. is one that popped up this week.
That video is actually hilarious.
Yeah, well, and so somebody shows Frank Gore Jr. one of his cards, and it legitimately looks like a kindergartner signed his initials.
All caps.
And then they show it to him as he's on the practice field. He's like, bro, that ain't my autograph. What are you talking about? I didn't sign that. And then you see some of his actual autographs that look like an autograph. What's crazier is the 3 initial one. There's like 3 versions of it, and they don't look anything alike.
They teach them, so maybe Brady had a few versions.
It's bad. So we've got a scenario now where, Topps could be in some real hot water on this stuff, because the prices that they charge for these products, a lot of their justification for it, beyond just market-driven stuff, is what they have to spend to get the autographs from these athletes into the product. I cannot imagine that Lionel Messi is signing cards for Topps for less than $800 to $1,000 a crack. I can't imagine that he is. He doesn't need to do that. So if that's their justification for raising the prices of these products, and they're not even doing what they say on the back of the card that they do, there's an issue.
How does this happen? Like, Fanatics, the one thing that I will say, well, there's a lot of positives that they brought, but one of the things I don't understand is their they have launched the hobby experience into being way more interactive with the athlete. When you look at Fanatics Fest, the athletes pouring into the building. When you look at the influence Michael Rubin has with A-list celebrities in the sports and sports entertainment space, nobody's even come close to this in the past 25, 30 years, right? So there's unlimited access. When you talk about resources, Fanatics has the corner market in a way where they have more resources than just about anybody when it comes to being able to have that access or send a freaking person to Messi's house for 10 minutes as he signs away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of autographs.
Yeah.
So their response to this is what makes me even more frustrated. From what I understand as I was digging into this, Topps is saying we are going to replace the autos out of Dynasty.
Yeah.
Now, I could be wrong. Are we aware of other Fanatics products that he has autographs in? This happened a year or two ago, right?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Who do you remember the product? We brought this up in the pod probably a year ago when this was first called into question. It was a Fanatics product, I believe, right?
For Messi? I don't remember.
When they first got rejected. So, did he sign any other products than Dynasty? Yes. What are they?
Well, back then they weren't being rejected. We were just talking about the rumors on message boards. But
we're saying that this is somebody called this out way before they spoke to this.
Yeah.
So now we're going to make it right by the people that can afford Dynasty. But the rest of y'all, well, hopefully it's fine. If it's in a PSA slab, what do you have to worry about?
Yeah.
That's kind of the mentality. That's concerning to me. The fact that we just don't say you're going to witness it.
Yeah.
Don't say that these were witnessed in actual autographs. It's going to affect the market as a whole in a much larger way if they can't find a way to rectify this or say there needs to be a statement. Hey, we screwed up. From this point forward, our commitment is this, because Fanatics brings you closer to the game than anybody else. Like, if that's really who they are, they need to address this, and they need to do it publicly. Hey, we screwed up. But
end of the day,
they are doing something, I guess, but
end of the day, it's simple, guys. As much as we at the grassroots of this hobby wish that the people running the show cared as much about the hobby as we do, we would be wrong. Michael Rubin seems like a guy who likes sports cards and likes sports, but I promise if there wasn't money in it, he wouldn't be here.
Sure.
Right? And so for your question earlier, like, how does this happen? It happens because if they can squeeze a few grand extra here and there, 50, 80, 100 times, that's $1 million a year that they don't have to spend to send people out to witness this stuff. Now,
is it possible that he is such a big name? Like, you hear about people getting Brady autos and Jordan autos, like how impossible that can be, even
Jordan
with vendors. Yeah.
Anymore.
So, but the point I'm trying to make is, like, I am sure that Messi's a guy where it's like, hey, if you want to sign stuff, here's how it's going to work. Just send it over. I can't tell you what day it'll be. Maybe it's an agent. Maybe it's somebody in his entourage. We'll make sure that they get signed and get back to you. But I'm not coming to you, and you can't fly to where I am right now because I got stuff to do. I'm very busy, right? It's likely that it was in good faith that they believed these would be signed. Maybe Messi didn't even know that these were signed for him. Like, who knows? Like, I don't want to say, like, that's where the scam is. It's just them not doing their due diligence to make sure that the people are in the room when it's being signed.
Don't put the verbiage, the signing of this autograph was witnessed by a representative of Topps, on the back of your cards if you aren't going to have a representative witness the signature.
Is this something that people will probably get over in the next month or two? Yes. Does it mean we should still talk about it? Absolutely. I think it's an issue.
I mean, the reality of it is in this hobby, the one thing we have learned is there is not a scandal big enough to take anybody down.
Speaking of that, PSA sent out a survey. And in that survey, they asked interesting questions. If you've not already heard this, you're under a rock somehow, but this has been talked about a lot in the last week. But one of the questions, two of them we want to address. One of them in the survey was, would you be interested in a cleaning service by PSA for $2.99 additional on the card? Well, first anybody new to the hobby, they're like, wow, that sounds really nice of them. And it's an optional service. But let's back up just a moment. There's a product out there, Kurt's Card Care, right? Everybody knows about it. It's kind of the industry standard on cleaning, buffing, restoring cards.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that they advertise that it does besides those?
No.
Clean the card. You can kind of buff out some flaws, restore vintage cards. Some of these cards soak in a solution overnight.
People can soak in cards for 50 years.
Yes, nothing new, but it is marketed differently and it's recognized brands. PSA began to desert cards that they could verify or they assumed or believed had been treated with this other foreign substance. Now, Gary and I have an episode a while back. We really got into it over what qualifies, altering a card. Where is the line ethically if you're going to make money on it? And we could spend a long time on that. But the point is, PSA said we're cracking down and no one will ever be able to send stuff in with a foreign substance on it, a card that's been altered, and get an authentication from us. However, if you'd like to give us $2.99, we'll clean the card for you. And one of the words they used was buffing it.
Yeah.
What are we buffing with?
Well, the fun part was
not to get a little bit of lint off. Something's going on the card.
Yeah, the best part about that is as soon as this comes out that this is being asked and surveyed by PSA, uproar ensues. And Nat Turner immediately walks it back with, we're not talking about anything other than just a microfiber cloth wiping down the card. BS. The reality of it is they know, PSA knows, that a whole bunch of the cards that they grade, I would say at least half of the cards that come in there have been touched by something from a just cleaning it standpoint. They also know that there is no planet that exists where they can tell whether somebody used Kurt's card spray to wipe down a card. What they can tell is if you use some type of a wax, like a turtle wax or a Meguiar's, that's a pretty popular one, to fill in scratches. They can see that and they'll flag that. But as far as just like spraying a Windex basically on a card and wiping it down to get rid of fingerprints and things like that, they know they can't combat that. So their response to that was, well, Kurt's Card Care shouldn't be making this money. We'll make this money and we'll just offer it to people so they don't have to do it themselves. Go ahead. I have a couple major issues with
There's
it.
a sequence here, and I've done this before, but for those of you that love to put on the tinfoil hat, beep, 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 here it is. I'm sitting in a board meeting or a strategic planning session a year and a half ago with PSA. The market has finally softened a little bit, and turnaround times are catching up. We are now the king of grading. We do set the market with our PSA 10s, and we are known in the industry to be the standard at this point. Collectors has just stepped in. Is it Collectors Universe or Collectors that owns?
It's just Collectors now.
The parent company buys up SGC, arguably, and it's not even really close at this point, the number 2 grading company that people are submitting with. Maybe hypothetically it starts like this. Hey, we got people sending in these cards. They've been doctored up. Our gem rates are actually a little bit higher than they've been in a while. Well, we shouldn't do that. What if, hear me out, in the next few steps, we do this to maximize our profits? Let's, one, make sure that nothing with any kind of substance can be, let's take a stand about our integrity in the hobby. We are PSA. We set the standard. No more altered cards. Short time after that, what if we crush the gem rate and change the center and give ourselves a reason for people that were getting an 80, 70, 80% gem rate, all of a sudden they're getting 30 to 50% gem rate. That's going to make it a little tougher, right?
Yeah.
But let's crush the gem rate. But you know what? What if right after we crush the gem rate, we offer a charge-up option for $2.99 for those of you that have been devastated that your gem rates are down, and maybe people will take advantage. And maybe as all this is going on, we start offering direct-to-consumer immediate submissions before they've even had a chance to pre-grade the card, to look it over thoroughly. A breaker can tell them this looks clean, and we have a direct account. Maybe we hang out with Backyard Breaks. Maybe we start allowing direct submissions through GameStop, and people think maybe there's an advantage there. Or maybe even the brick and mortars that aren't into the fractional selling like Burbank's, now we have an immediate spot for submissions.
Or just direct from eBay.
Direct in from eBay. In the moment, in the impulsive moment, a brand new card, they can start submitting it right then before they've even had a chance to pre-grade this under a light or anything else.
Let's charge them 15% more.
Hypothetically, that may be a good way to maximize profits.
Yeah.
And hypothetically, maybe nobody will notice the sequence of events that makes us look really bad. Really bad.
Yeah, it's...
Nobody's going to doctor a card, but if anybody does, it better be PSA, maybe $2.99. I don't know.
Anybody who's a long-time listener of this pod knows that one of the few things that will fire me up to my nth degree, lots of things will fire me up somewhat, but blatant hypocrisy really gets under my skin. And the hypocrisy that PSA is showing here is just mind-numbing to me. But more importantly, the fact that $3 more on a value bulk submission is a 15% increase in revenue. That's a big bump. Number. That is a huge number.
No.
It's not $3. I had this conversation with Krista this week. Krista's my wife.
Oh, boy. Are you sure you want to continue here? Okay, all right.
We were at the store.
Try, Krista. I tried to help him.
And she wanted to buy some plates, outdoor plates for our patio.
Sure.
And they had some we saw, and they were cool. They were fine. They were 50 cents a piece. I was like, perfect. Perfect. We use them like 10 times a year. No big deal. But somebody had sat a better looking one on top of some of these. And she was like, oh, I like that more. We find where they're at. Those were $2.50 a piece.
Yeah.
In her mind, she was like, it's only a couple bucks. My brain saw 500%. That's what my brain saw. I look at percentages.
I'm with Krista on this one.
Yeah, I know you are. You're the
but
same
I've
with
let
hotels.
you. Yeah, I let you book the hotel. Never again.
So that's my issues with it: the blatant hypocrisy and the fact that they just think people aren't going to think about the fact that they're just looking at a 15% increase in there.
They're talking about a sleeve service as well, like you have in the back. Is that just for resubs and people feel like they can crack it more safely?
No, it's to keep the card from rattling around. Like you see some of these PSA like mini cards and things like that are in the slab like kicked sideways and things like that. They already made it really difficult to crack the new PSA slabs. Well, I do have some tricks, but yeah,
in my mind, that why isn't that just covered? Like if I buy a mini card and you're encapsulating it, encapsulate it.
Because dollars.
It's just
yeah.
Let's continue. While we're at it, on things that make sense, Walmart is doing a live card selling platform. Walmart Live is introducing trading cards into the space. And if you haven't had a chance to take a peek at it, it's pretty good.
Is it good? I haven't looked at it at all.
No, it's not.
Okay, it's wild.
Now, they do have We the Hobby is partnering with them, which is a major brand that is, when it comes to the repackers, breakers, like they're a more respected one. That's one of the big dogs. I've not heard a lot of bad things about them. If I feel like gambling on a repack product, I usually go with their stuff, but it's not cheap.
Didn't you hit that Romeo Dobbs out of their stuff?
I hit, what did I get? No, it was a Jaden Reed.
Oh, it was Jaden Reed.
Gold.
That's
no huddle.
Because I ended up with it.
Yep. But anyway, so they're partnering with it. The other thing is people literally, how are they doing it? They're like, have a camera facing them. They're like, now this card, and now we have that. Like the technology isn't quite the same there. But here's the point that I wanted to make with this and why this matters. If you haven't realized it yet, this live shopping model is just getting started.
Yeah.
And you're going to start seeing, my prediction is major brands in the live selling space with cards are going to start getting good deals with, hey, you can only find us on Whatnot. You can only find us on eBay Live. You can only find us on Walmart Live. Where I think the differentiator is going to come into play is how they build communities around that.
Yes.
And I think the first one of these platforms that really figures out that social community piece of it is going to catapult. We're selling on Whatnot every week on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Be there.
But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the next 2 to 3 years. I do think it won't be all in one spot. You won't get 80% of your favorite people on one platform. It will be a little more spread out. Some of these other live selling platforms will be buying up some of the other ones to consolidate. But it's not going to slow down anytime soon. If you're an eBay-only seller or if you're considering getting back into the online sales space for business, I'd really think about diversifying it. If I started all over again with my 45,000 cards in inventory, I might take 10,000 of those and set them aside and say, I'm going to do live selling once a week on one of these platforms.
Yeah.
But I would say don't ignore this. Walmart putting money in it, whether you like Walmart or not, that's big money investing in this space. So, it's going to keep happening. It's not going away anytime soon. You may not like Whatnot, but some of these other platforms may have something that you're wanting. So definitely keep an eye on it. You have any other thoughts on Walmart doing live selling with cards?
No, it's just like anything else. Walmart looks at where there's success, and then they go in and they copy it and try to make it cheaper.
Do you think they'll hire breakers with their retail inventory?
Well, so really important thing to understand about the way Walmart does sports cards. Walmart doesn't own any of that inventory.
Right.
That's owned by a holding company who rents shelf space.
Yeah.
So there's no
way that would
there's
make
no
sense.
way that makes sense for them. Now, at some point, Walmart just might decide, hey, we want to buy a few $100 million worth of sports cards every year and try this. It wouldn't surprise me if they do, but I do think that they are the only thing that they bring to the table in that race right now is a large amount of money. Mm-hmm. Like they're behind the 8 ball from everybody else, but they do bring more money probably than anybody else.
Yeah.
So,
and it'll be a new segment of visibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I don't know too many people who are shopping at Walmart.com who are like, I wonder if I should just go look at these live sports cards that are selling. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even know where to go on their website to find live selling. Unless they do a better job of that. I don't think it's like opening a new market.
No, but it is the first big box to have an online live selling platform for cards.
For sure.
That is unique. I think that's interesting to watch.
For sure.
I don't know that everybody's going to follow suit on that, but definitely worth
Speaking of
making
big
note.
boxes,
Yeah,
you ready for the value box?
that's good.
You like that?
Segue after segue after segue. The people want it. The people get it.
Yeah, you didn't know where I was going with that, but let's jump into the value box. This week on the value box, and this may stretch into 2 weeks. It depends on how
We're talkative today.
Here.
I'm well rested. I'm back from vacation.
You are. Am I good? Okay.
I'm not done interrupting you. Okay, I'm done now.
We want to talk about, we've gotten a lot of questions. We've had a lot of comments, especially on TikTok. And we talk about the business side of this a lot, but I don't think we've ever gone on a deep dive breaking down what the economics of doing this to make a living looks like. And we get a lot of people asking us, hey, how did you make that transition into doing this full time? How did you make that jump? What did you do? What were the questions you needed to ask yourself? So what we want to break down today is what that looks like economically, whether you are a show dealer primarily like I am, whether you are a hybrid dealer like Jason is, where you're part show, you're part eBay, and other platforms, our business together where we have this podcast and our brand and our whatnot. What do the economics of it look like so that you can kind of reverse engineer what you would need to do in order to make that leap? Is that a pretty good summary of what that looks like?
Yeah. Why don't you kick it off?
Oh, I thought
Downsides.
I did. Okay, well, so from a downsides of this business standpoint, anybody who tells you, I see guys with this kind of content all the time, and it just makes me want to scream. I actually chuckle more than anything else. The screaming part of me is because there's so many of you guys that are getting misled by these people. The biggest downside to this is you are going to work more hours more often than you ever did in your regular job. You just are. My wife said something to me the other day. She was like, I feel like this is all that your energy is on it. Yeah, because I don't have a 9 to 5 anymore where somebody else is responsible for the paycheck. I show up, I get a paycheck every week. On a regular basis, and I think Jason's probably the same, we're anywhere from 50 to 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
Every Saturday and Sunday, just those 2 days, is a minimum of 20 hours for me. Minimum. If it's a 3-day show weekend, it's about 35 to 40 hours in those 3 days. Plus, there's no days off the rest of the time. You try to take a day off on, say, a Monday to recoup, but you still are like, oh, I got to ship, or I need to list these things, or I need to take a few hours and price the stuff I bought this weekend so that I'm ahead of the game for next
Or I'm out of
weekend.
inventory.
Yeah. The downsides are numerous, and they are not easy to overcome. They take work. Are they all overcomable? Absolutely. But from sourcing inventory to not having time, I literally had to cancel a vacation last week because one of the shows that we do, if we don't do it, we lose the tables, and I cannot afford to lose those tables. That show is responsible for probably 20% of my annual revenue between that show, the few times a year it does, and their other affiliated show. So I can't afford not to do it. Had to cancel a vacation. Things like that are just the reality when you are running your own business. What do you consider the downsides?
I just think the time it will take to hit stride. I think that's kind of the myth. This is not a business where it's just up and to the right and it's like the same thing. You can have 2 or 3 months where the shows are great and you have repeat buyers, and then you can hit a lull, or summer happens for the first time in the car business and you're like, what is going on? What is happening? Nothing. And it's just different. There are seasons with it, but I think the variability as you're scaling this is a huge piece of it. Gary and I do things in a way that we would consider more risk averse, but there are probably people that take much bigger risks where they could lose a lot more or lose it all that may spend less time a week working on it. There's different ways to do it. For me, it is a double edge. Like a downside for me right now, about 60% of my revenue, maybe 65, is rolling in through the online stuff with eBay. It used to be 100%. I did that for like a full year of nothing but eBay. Had some things going on in my life where I needed to be home, so it was my only option, right? But the question I get asked more than anything else live when we're on TikTok or anything is, what do you make a week? What do you make a month? What can I count? You cannot on eBay, especially high volume low end, you cannot count on X a month. You have some variables. You can kind of notice some trends through a quarter, but it doesn't take much for that to swing wildly. And anybody selling full-time on eBay with a collectible space can tell you that that's fairly consistent. The sell-through rate's not the same on every item. You're going to have issues that are affected, like shipping. eBay could screw up and your metrics are off. I got back from a week of vacation, go to print out hundreds of labels for the sales over the week while I was gone. eBay has a software error that says, hey, issue generating labels. It still generated all my labels, gave me no pick list to pull from. I had to go mix and match the order with the name for the tag for the label and then go pull the order. Half of the orders combined, half didn't. So I spent an additional like 7 to 9 hours on Sunday.
3 hours of shipping turned into 10 to 12.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is part of the deal. And guess what? Those buyers have been waiting a whole week for me to ship as I promised on Monday morning. So there are variables in this space that are really going to affect your well-being if you don't block it off. But it is nonstop. Last night, I'm pricing cards on the couch until 9 o'clock. I started 7 o'clock yesterday morning. I could wait. I could stop. You and I could do a better job of blocking off time for this and that, but if we're trying to scale something, it's going to take work.
Yes, it's
and a lot of it. The biggest downside is it is not quick money.
No.
It is fun money, but it is not quick money. Anybody telling you that is lying to you or wants something from you.
Well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about the economics of doing this as your income. First things first. Let me start with this, and this is at its root, if you want to do this as a business, it's a sales job. Okay? Plain and simple. You're selling something. So you need to understand how that works especially if you have a spouse, kids, whatever. If you're single and you have low rent and you don't have a lot of bills, go nuts. But here's what I would suggest if you want to do this as a full-time income. First off, you got to build up to it. By the time you're ready to pull the trigger on this being what you do, my recommendations would be this. You should have a minimum of 5 figures sitting in the business bank account. Okay, first and foremost. Secondly, and this is a big one, you should probably have at least 25, I would recommend more like $30,000 to $35,000 worth of inventory. Okay, that doesn't have to be all high dollar cards. It doesn't all have to be dollar cards, but you should have a nice chunk of inventory. And here's why. On any given show, this is all the reverse engineering you kind of have to do, which we'll walk through in a second. Any given show, if you can sell 30% of your inventory, that's kind of what my target is. I target about a 30% sell-through rate on my inventory, value-wise.
Now, he's set up every weekend, sometimes twice a week.
Yes. So, and that is why there's so much other work the rest of the time, because you have to constantly resource. So, and if I'm jump in here at any point, but let's reverse engineer this. But that advice is what I would give you. And then I would also tell you, set whatever you need to pay yourself as a salary, whatever that number is. Say you need to pay yourself $1,000 a week. Let's call it $1,000 a week for round numbers. If you make more than $1,000 that week, only pay yourself $1,000 because the next week you might make less and you can still pay yourself $1,000. Don't just start taking all your profit every single week. It's going to bite you in the butt. Figure out what you need to pay yourself that, and go on. But let's reverse. So let's say you need to make 50 grand a year. How much do you need to sell in order to make 50 grand a year? Well, that goes back to our conversation from a few weeks ago that got so many people fired up about margins.
And for clarification, Gary we are not selling wax. We do not break. So that's a qualifier. There are people that do that. We are not prospect, grade, and flippers either. There are other models. The way that we do stuff is we buy singles with margin. We sell singles for as much as we can get out of them.
Yes. And so if you need to make 50 grand a year, you need to ask yourself this question. How much do I need to sell in order to be able to pay myself that? Well, that depends on the margins that you're buying and selling at. For me, and Jason is very similar, maybe not exact, but my average margin when I sell, I'm shooting for 30%. That's what I want to make on any given card.
Net.
Right? Net.
Yeah.
So if I sell a $100 card, I want to make $30 in profit on that. So using that as a baseline, we can roughly assume that before any expenses, I need to sell $150,000 a year worth of stuff. That means if I set up every single weekend and don't take any vacations, I need to sell about $3 grand a week. Now, we need to talk about the expenses. Some shows are very expensive. Some shows I'm in, by the time we're all said and done, we're in for $1,000. Some I'm in for 50 or 60. But on average, I'd say over the course of a year, my expenses from materials, shipping supplies, table fees, fuel, mileage, gas, food, probably around 25 grand a year, maybe a little bit more, but that's a good round number. So now I know I need to make $175,000 worth of sales to pay myself.
And that's you at 33% net margin, actually.
Yeah. Yes.
Just for round numbers.
So that's why it's so important that you buy stuff at margin. When these guys are out here screaming that they only need to make 5%, they have to be doing millions of dollars a year in sales for that to make sense. Some guys in this business do that, but I promise they're not making 50 grand a year selling millions. They're making a lot more than that.
Sure.
So that's why that's so important. So that reverse engineering way of doing it, what do I need to pay myself? What margin do I need to target in order to do that? How much do I need to sell? Those are all numbers that you need to know in the bottom of your soul. You need to know. And once you know those numbers, then you can figure out what you need to buy, how you need to buy it, where you need to buy it. And it's why we are such sticklers on how we buy things. And I tell customers, Jason's seen me. He does it differently than I do, but I just look at it, hey, this is where I got to buy it at. If it works for you, cool. If it doesn't, no big deal. It's not any skin off my teeth. I can't pay you 95% for that. Mm-hmm. Sorry, just can't.
Yep.
Anything to add there?
I just think the thing that's often overlooked is like this idea of, well, I just have to take the leap, right? I just have to take the leap. And we would be hypocrites to say that to some degree we have not done that. But before we were ever full-time, we were doing this and spending a lot of time part-time on it.
Full-time on top of a full-time job. I was doing 45 shows a year for several years before I pulled back and quit my job.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's a big commitment. The numbers are a lot bigger than you initially think they will be.
Yeah.
Because for some of you, you hear, all right, so if I did $3 grand at a show, I'd be ecstatic. And it's easy for you to pull that money over, but you're going to be cash rich for about 3 or 4 months. And then you're going to look at your inventory and be like, man, my inventory is stale.
Yeah.
How much cash do I have to spend on the inventory? And it's not there because you've been putting it in your pocket.
Yep.
So I think that's a super important thing to realize is for an income. Now, not everybody's trying to do this full time.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Not everybody wants to put in 50, 60 hours on this. Not everybody's trying to grow a podcast brand and open an LCS and do all the stuff that we're attempting to do. And that's completely fine. But the numbers are always a little bit bigger. So starting with that. Now, how many of you listening to this want to go full time and then you hear us throw out the numbers like that to net 50 grand? You're like, oh, man.
Yeah, that's tough.
Now, tax benefits, costs of goods, mileage, expenses, like setting yourself up for success. There's a lot of things that you can do that will help you in that, but there is a lot more to it. That is why, as I said, I'm cards full time and I do shows and that number's increasing. I have kept the online piece with eBay rolling to mitigate risk, to diversify. Also, low end, if you're willing to put the time in on it, has a much higher multiplier on margin percentage than the stuff that Gary does exclusively. So I have some stuff that I will buy and I spend $1,000 on a collection. It's worth 15 grand. And I get to see that realized profit margin over the next 3 to 6 months in the store. The trade-off with that is Gary doesn't have to spend 2 to 3 hours a day pulling orders and shipping. Gary doesn't have to respond to dumb customers on eBay. They're trying to shake you down for a 94-cent refund on a card. I had one this week. I think I still did the right thing on the customer service end, but eBay has a card grading category broken down the guidelines. Very good, includes edges. It even says major chipping and wear along the edges. I had a card that was in VG condition. They left feedback that it was in good condition, not VG. Well, good's not even a category on eBay. My job in that moment isn't to argue if I'm justified according to eBay. My job is to say, I wish I would have taken better pictures for you, and I did not realize this was in a condition different than you were expecting. Let me refund you this. I hope that you'll do business with me again in the future. I was able to convert that neutral feedback into a positive, but I have to do that every time. That's a 94-cent refund. So there's over 45,000 active listings in my store right now. I'm committing my time because I believe those margins and the scale of this over time are worth it. But at some point, I'm going to have to hire out that shipping. At some point, I might say, hey, you know what? Let's roll all this over to Whatnot. At some point, there's just a lot of other variables in there that many don't consider with time and energy and resources.
And that leads to the next point here. Depending on what your goals are, you may have to get outside your comfort zone. One thing that I am likely to have to do if I want to get past because I'm in transparency, I'm kind of capped with what I can make because I only do shows.
And you were paying yourself.
Yes. And
so there's an amount of cash that has to go in his pocket on a regular basis.
So I'm paying myself, and I don't sell online really outside of our Whatnot stream. I don't have an eBay store. I don't do any of that. But if I want to take the next step with my business, I will likely have to do that. Now, the goal here for Jason and I both is that within a year or so, we neither one have a separate business anymore, and we just have the ball card show, and it is the podcast, it is our Whatnot, and it is a brick and mortar, and it is just doing the large regional and national shows 15 or 20 times a year. That's the goal. But if I just was on my own and that wasn't something we were shooting towards, if I wanted to take the next step, I would need to go, okay, I've got to go to eBay. And now maybe when I go to eBay, I don't do Jason's model, but I can list a lot of the really unique stuff that I have that may take a long time to sell in my showcases, but on eBay might fly because there's millions of people looking at it versus the hundreds or thousands that are seeing it on a monthly basis in my showcases.
Yep. Yeah. The point that this brings up is we're always thinking about, how do I make sure that I'm diversifying this? How do I make sure that there's not only one way that I can generate this revenue? How do I make sure that when I buy a collection, I'm getting every bit of value I can out of it? And we have some cards that make sense in a showcase and some that are just going to sit there for a long time. And you have to think through how that's possible. But even as you mentioned the brick and mortar, so Gary and we were very close to signing a lease
Yeah.
a few months ago. I think we've mentioned this in the past. Like the Columbus area has had some really big groups come in and buy up all the retail space over the last few years. Columbus is an area that's very inventory poor when it comes to single family homes, and retail space is even becoming that as well. That's why there's so much mixed use getting developed right now. But they didn't care that Gary and I separately have been running our own businesses for years. They wanted to see the P&L statements, the bank statements for our joint business venture. And if not, they wanted a 5-year personal guarantee with a lease structure that can change from year to year.
On their end.
But not on. It was just so leveraged against us that didn't make sense. So we said, time out. Let's grow this joint business together, and over the next year we're going to be in a much better position to get that. So a cheaper spot, small retail space.
What the overhead necessities were for us to break even.
So a cheap spot, like 1,200 square feet, not in the most ideal area, not allowing us to do all the unique things that we want to do with our shop, but adequate.
Yeah.
On the cheap end, and anybody that does this in Columbus will tell you, like, that's cheap. $3,000 a month is about where we were going to be just on rent, right?
Just on rent. That doesn't count utilities, security,
some of the cams and all that stuff. Yeah.
Any of that stuff. Just on rent. The breakdown of it was this: for us to break even, and of course, this did include paying ourselves. When I say a small salary, it was a small salary.
I wouldn't call it a salary.
Yeah, it was small.
So we weren't completely working for free.
Yes. Yeah. We needed to sell about $30,000 worth of singles a month to break even. That's not profit. That's break even. Was that doable? Yes. Was it the smartest move we could make at that time to push all in that scenario? No. So we decided we still want to do this. Let's do it differently. Let's build this first so that we are in a better position on the front end. Yeah. To not be over leveraged. Those are all questions that a lot of people that have never owned a business before or thought about it, that just see sports cards and see guys set up at shows and they see $100 bills going across the table, think, man, this is easy money. No, like Jason said, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of fun,
and
it ain't easy.
And we've even set some goals with it. Like a goal of ours would be, by the time we're in brick and mortar, Whatnot is paying the lion's share of the business expenses to have a physical brick and mortar. Now, when we talk about an LCS, I think a lot of people don't understand where the money is coming from. And there are a couple of different models that are taken. Now, this is coming from two guys that do not have an LCS.
Correct.
So before you jump down our throats, how many years you been doing that? Like Gary was like, hey, what Major League Baseball team do you work for if you prospecting baseball cards? Shut up, old guy. Shut up, boomer. Back at it. Sorry, boomers. It's just the way it is. Y'all are nasty on there. We're mean, but y'all are nasty. An LCS, typically you have two models. You have one that is the majority of their income they're pushing through wax and breaks in their own brand, and then you have ones that will have the wax and breaks, focus on singles, and then you also have these pop-ups that are just singles only, but that is definitely a dying breed in the industry to not have any wax on the shelves at all.
Yeah.
What you need to consider is what it will cost to, on the front end of that LCS, have wax available to the customer. Why does that matter? A lot of people don't think about this because with Fanatics, from what we understand, it's about a 6-month process if you're doing well and showing them what they want to see before you're going to have a direct account with Fanatics. When that happens, that does not mean you're getting what you want for how much you want, and as like you are buying, maybe you get a case or two.
Whatever they tell you to buy, you're buying.
But you're also buying the stuff that you know you're going to have a hard time moving.
Yep.
So let's say that for that first 6 months, you're like, well, once I get that account, then I'll be set.
You didn't want that case of Squishmallows Prism? Tough.
Well, exactly. When we launch and we open, we have to have wax on the shelves. Why? You only have so much time to make a first impression in the community you're in. When people are walking in, you better have the important new wax on the shelf. We anticipate that we'll probably be close to breaking even on that for the first year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think about how many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars are going to have to go into having that on the shelves. Because if you don't have it when they walk in, they're going to treat you like you're just set up like a flea market or you're just set up like a card show. You have to have it on the shelves. We're not going to be dependent on wax for our margins, but at some point, you got to shell out that cash on the front end to show that you're at least going to be aware of what's released people have a chance to get it.
Yeah, you got to have wax on the shelf if you're an LCS. You don't have to have. We have 2 shops, 3 really in Columbus that have pretty big allocations. You don't have to be that. You don't have to have $200,000 to $300,000 worth of wax at all times on your shelves. You can have 5 or 6 grand worth of wax on your shelves. It can be a lot of retail and some hobby, but you got to have some wax. Relevant stuff. It can't all be 1990 Fleer basketball.
Now, 7 to 10 years ago, if you had allocations or you could get your hands on wax, especially through the boom, that's where 90% of the money was.
Yeah.
People were getting allocations of like Prism basketball hobby boxes for 20% of what they could sell it for, 15%.
Less
with the markup when it got really hot. I mean, it was insane.
2020 was when football and basketball stuff really took off. 2019-20 Prism basketball was kind of the beginning of the boom, the Zion chase. Wholesale on Prism boxes, if you were buying by the case at that time, the first run of wholesale was $230 a box. At the peak, those things were selling for $3,000 a box.
Mm-hmm. 10x your money.
Yeah. And for about a year and a half to 2, that's what was happening. And you saw these shops that have been around for a while just feast. And to be fair, they also went through a decade or 2 before that where they were making
famine.
$20 a box.
Yeah.
Now they're back to, they're not making $20 a box, but they're not making 10x either. They're usually running around a 30% margin.
Yeah. Which is very different. So how much wax would you need to sell?
If that was your
to add,
thing.
if you were going to pay for it in wax, so let's run that. You say 30% margin.
Yeah, I mean it's the same numbers.
So 30,000 in cards.
Yeah,
30,000 in wax.
Yeah, so that's $720,000 a year. Now that sounds like a big number, but let me tell you something. If you're a business with a brick and mortar, $720,000 a year is not a big number.
Yeah,
at all.
So why do people choose the brick and mortar model? Why are they actually opening them?
The buying.
It's not because of what's going out. It's because of what's coming through the doors. And the margins are there for them. And here's part of the reason. If you walk up to my table at a show and I tell you I'm buying at 70%, there's going to be 30% of you that are just like almost offended immediately.
Right.
However, when you walk into a brick and mortar and they say, hey, I'm at like 50 to 60%, you see the brick and mortar, you see the lights, you see the wax on the wall, you see the employees, you see the inventory, and in your mind, subconsciously, you're like, I get it. It costs money to run a business.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's a great way to source. However, you are introducing new issues as well. An LCS is one of the prime targets for burglary and theft, for break-ins. Yep. You're going to have people that bring in collections that sell them, and then you find out a week later it wasn't even theirs to sell. You're going to have a lot of other issues. You're going to have to manage employees. You're going to have bills. You're going to have a landlord. You're going to have fanatics pushing you to buy their newest hoodie and take up 6 feet of space with it. Like, there's a lot to consider with that with the LCS. However, it does provide an opportunity for a physical place for collectors to hang out, to build community, for you to source inventory, for you to sell and to make money, sure. Yeah. But there's a lot to think about with it.
So, I mean, in general, I guess that's the overview here. Hopefully that answers a lot of the questions that we've been getting as far as, when to do this, how do you do it?
Yeah.
The when is all a question of what your risk tolerance is.
Sure.
Like I said, recapping, my advice, have minimum of 5 figures sitting in your business bank account. And
there's some of you that are going to say, oh, you need 10 times that. Maybe for you do.
Yeah, I'm talking about if you're opening an LCS, you do need 10 times that.
At a minimum.
Yeah, if you're doing shows, though, like say you just decide you want to do what I do, which is, hey, I'm just going to do cards full time. I'm going to set up at 45 or so shows every year. I'm going to sell some on Facebook. I'm going to sell some on whatnot. 5 figures in the bank, minimum. 30-ish, 25 to 35 grand in inventory, if not more. And not, you don't want 25 or 30,000 $1 cards unless your whole model is eBay. You want to have those things. Decide what you need to pay yourself and then reverse engineer the numbers to figure out what you need to sell in order to be able to pay yourself that and what margins you need to be at in order to make that happen. Then it's just a question of when you're ready to pull the trigger. I did 40 plus shows a year for several years before I pulled the trigger. You may not need to do that. For my wife, she needed to see that this wasn't a 6 month, 8 month little window of success. It was consistent and to where she was comfortable with us making that move. And then from there, it's just doing the work. It ain't easy. It is fun, but it's work and it's stress. And when you have a show that you were expecting to do 10 grand in sales at, and you only do 2,500, or you have a show where you're expecting to do 3 grand in sales, and you only do 700, are you in a position to still pay yourself what you need to get paid that week? That's why having that cushion is so important. That's why having the inventory is so important. And then every week you got to keep buying. I did 9 grand, 10 grand at Xenia this week. I need to spend 7 this week. Mm-hmm. I just need to. It's just a reality.
Yeah. And don't underestimate too, like, especially my first month or two, a few months into this, like, this is what I'm doing. There were a few months there where it was like, I used to work on garage doors, and guess what? I was, sourcing and listing, and then at 1:00 I met at someone's home that needed a garage repair done, and that was how I was able to keep myself in business with what I love, was doing stuff I didn't want to do. I don't want to ship cards 20 hours a week. That's the work. It's a job.
Yep.
There was an interview Card Collector 2 did. Was it B Sports that he does, or no, Mikey B? Who is it?
B Sports is Brad.
Not Brad. Oh, shoot.
Well, go ahead with what
anyway, it was one of the most recent ones, but it was, the common cliche was thrown out there. Find something that you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life.
BS.
That's crap.
Yeah.
That's crap. You might enjoy what you're doing,
but it's still work.
But you're working. You're working. This is work right now.
Yeah.
What we're about to do is work. The show it's all work. You just get to decide if you want to build something for yourself. I'm so glad that I come back from vacation. I don't have a boss to micromanage me and give me 50 things that they never mentioned before vacation when I get back.
Right.
I'm so glad that when my kids need me, I can drop everything that I'm doing and be there for them. I'm so glad that whenever I have a really good show and I'm in a great position, I don't have to say, you know what, I really need to get 2,000 cards up on the eBay store this week.
Right.
There's flexibility with that. I never have to worry about when I want to take a vacation unless we're going to lose a show that's really important to us. But there are so many upsides with this. We just want you to be aware that it's not all rainbows and sunshine. It is work. It is a grind. And there are numbers that matter when you do this. So if you have somebody that's offering you like this quick, easy way to have a 6-figure business on cards, right?
It's not real.
500 thumbnails out there. It's not quick and it's not easy.
Yeah.
And it's not cheap.
It's all BS.
And a 6-figure card business is likely going to be a $20,000 to $30,000 profit.
At the
if you do
that's
okay.
At the most. Yeah.
So just numbers to consider there. All right, we need to keep it moving.
Let's go low end liquid time.
Low end liquid. This is a really cool set. It's really popped off for me in the last few months. I was surprised it didn't early on, but that kind of happens sometimes. 2001 Upper Deck Legends of New York set. So these are all kind of unique because they have big names, and I've told you this before. Any set that emphasizes vet legends or vet stars from a team or for an era or something like this specifically where it's all New York. So it's just all Yankees and Mets.
You look like you're selling on Walmart Live right now.
I know, Walmart Live. They all have like this cool little fuzzy patch on them. It is not from a uniform, anything like that. But they're all players from the past. So people that set build or collect a certain, maybe Chris Chambliss is their PC. Not a ton of sets you're going to find on the newer stuff. Charlie Keller, Dusty Rhodes. So this set has been one that sells typically multi-quantity whenever somebody buys one. They are cheap. You can get them in bulk. I think this was a collection I bought, and these were a subset that somebody built out. 2001 Upper Deck, Legends of New York. Pretty good low-end liquid set.
Perfect. Quick and to the point. I like it. Last but not least, the Lookout. Like Jason said last week, if you like this stuff, go check out last week's full episode. It was all prospecting all the time. We highlighted guys who weren't necessarily the chase guy on a given team that you could target and still find really good value in if you weren't going after like the Jack Caglianones or the Chase Burns. This week, on the lookout, again, we talk about guys we think are going to get the call really soon. I want to talk about Blaze Jordan of the Boston Red Sox.
That name sounds like a blast from the past.
It is a blast from the past. Blaze Jordan, if you're a prospecting person, you probably remember his first Bowmans are in 2021 Bowman. He was a high school draftee in 2020. He's just now 22 years old. Blaze Jordan came to fame on the high school recruiting circuit and scouting circuit because as a 15-year-old, he was hitting 500-foot tanks. Obviously with metal, but still, 15-year-old hitting 500-foot tanks. He was drafted in the 3rd round that year. I think he was 89th overall. And I'm wanting to say it was like a $1.3 million.
TikTok's going to hold you accountable on that.
I said want to say. I might be wrong there, but I think it was right around there. And then he was bad for a couple years. He was all out power and nothing else. Struck out a ton. Well, over the last 18 months, he's finally physically matured, and he's matured as a hitter. He's now in AAA. Boston has a massive hole at first base that they're trying to plug with Romy Gonzalez and Abraham Toro. I don't know how long that's going to, it's like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dam. Like, I don't know how long that's going to hold. But Blaze Jordan has finally put it together over the last 18 months or so. And this year, he is hitting .328 with a .405 on base percentage, and he's slugging .524. He's got an OPS of .929. He's hit 7 home runs. More importantly, he's not trying to hit everything out of the park anymore. He has 16 doubles, and last but not least, he has more walks than strikeouts. He's got 23 walks, 22 strikeouts. Over the last 18 months, he's taken his career numbers to 292, 353, 464 for an 817 career OPS in the minors. He is very close to getting an opportunity to replace the injured Tristan Casas at first base. Boston desperately needs it. I think they may hold him back a little longer than they normally would just because they have so many first-year players in the lineup right now that they risk it turning a little sour without veterans every day. But they're not going to be able to keep this guy down too much longer when the guys manning first base for them right now are hitting combined 200 without any power. So Blaze Jordan, 2021 Bowman. His stuff is still reasonably inexpensive. He plays in one of the biggest baseball markets in the country, in all likelihood, when he gets called up. And if he does anything at all, he'll see a nice little spike.
As always, you can find us every Thursday dropping an episode on YouTube. Every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be live on Whatnot.
Tonight, come see us. Next week, we're going to begin doing some crazy things with buyer giveaways.
Oh, yeah.
Cannot wait to announce it. We're so close to being able to. Also, in the next week, keep an eye out. We will be having a full case product review from a repacker that took the risk to ask us to be honest about their repacks. So you'll see that coming up as well. This has been the Ball Card Show, the sports podcast.
For the Sports Collector.
Bye now.
Peace.